on the Gianna Volpe Report, brought to you in part by Village Overhead Door, by the Duncan Inn in Jamesport, by the Peconic Cellar Door, and by the Crazy Fork in Mattituck.
We are back with poet and auctioneer Lucas Hunt, author of Iowa, beautiful book of poetry, published by Thane and Prose in New York, and an auctioneer who will be doing actually an auction this weekend, Saturday at 5 p.m. For End Hospice. It's a box art auction. Now, where will this be?
This will be at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in East Hampton.
Okay. All right. So this is a South Fork event.
South Fork event for sure.
North Forkers take the ferry or drive around. That's what I do because it's free.
Uh-huh.
So first of all, what is box art?
Box art signifies sculpture created from a cigar box. So the premise, the premise of this art auction to benefit End Hospice is each artist, local artists, North Fork and South Fork, are presented with a cigar box, usually like the old wood style cigar box, and they are
the ones that slide.
Some slide, some open from the top.
Okay.
Yeah. Some are thin, some are wide. There's all different shapes.
They're all different. How cool.
And each artist gets to interpret that box as they wish, and a lot of artists just take massive liberty and kind of create their own sculpture around it. But that's the premise, and 15 of them will be auctioned off live, and then another 70 will be there in the silent auction.
Really?
And all of the proceeds go to benefit End Hospice.
And the other 70 are already decorated by other artists?
Yeah, they're all equally brilliant. Just some are going to be in the live auction. Maybe there's some recognizable names. There's a lot of actually well-known artists.
How cool.
Yeah.
And supporting a great cause, End Hospice.
It's wonderful.
And then you mentioned before the break about Camp Grief.
Camp Good Grief, yeah.
Yes, Camp Good Grief. So important. A bereavement camp for youngsters. Is it just local kids?
I think it's all of the county.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like End Hospice, they serve all over.
The 5 East End towns.
Yeah, the 5 East End towns.
Yes. And that is not the only event that Mr. Hunt has this weekend here on the East End. He is also going to be doing a poetry reading at Harbor Books in Sag Harbor, Sunday at 5 p.m. Will you be reading from Iowa?
Absolutely.
I love your book.
Well, thank you. You read very well from it. No, we both have good voices. If anyone's listening now, they're probably like leaned over, slobbering in a chair, like, I feel relaxed.
Or turning the dial, because they're like they think they're so cool.
They're not waking me up.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You have a very mellifluous voice. I will be reading from Iowa at Harbor Books on Sunday at 5 p.m. and signing books and just meet and greet, chat, have fun.
Very cool. Have you been to Harbor Books yet?
I sure have.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to work with the owner when it used to be Bookhampton.
Oh, okay.
And so we're like old colleagues, and she's started her own bookstore, and I'm writing books.
I miss... We had a Bookhampton on Love Lane.
I remember.
And they're not there, and that always makes me feel responsible, because I'm like, if I had just gone
it's
there.
Not your fault. It is not your fault.
Okay.
That bookstores around the country.
I know.
Business.
I did a piece about that back in 2012, I believe. It was when Borders here in Riverhead closed down, and it was, I wanted to know if the antique book market was picking up as bookstores were closing down.
Yeah.
And I believe that what I did find was that there was an uptick in antiques, and I think at that time, antiquing was big amongst like young newlyweds that were decorating their homes. This was the fallout of the Great Recession, and I imagine that that's probably the best way to outfit your home is to go to an antique shop, or my favorite, garage sales and auctions. So how did you get into auctioneering?
Well, it's funny that you did that really intuitive segue, because a lot of the big auction houses, like Sotheby's, started off as a book auction
Interesting.
company. Yeah, it actually began like that. Those were very prized objects back in the day, hundreds of years ago. Yeah, so it's a good connection. I got into auctioneering growing up in Iowa. Again, going back through poetry. I was raised on a pig farm in Iowa. Grew up working there. Started working at 10 years of age for $1 an hour.
Wow.
And got to know the country. We had cornfields,
Yes.
soybean fields. When I say got to know, I didn't have a choice. I mean, I was born there, and that was the only game in town in terms of...
In Iowa, I feel like the joke would be that you have a cornfield even if you don't want one.
That's it. You just grow up like in the midst of farms. Even in the city, you smell the farm wafting in. So I was exposed to auctions at a very young age. I remember my father taking me to the American Legion, which is a poem in one of the poems in this book, Iowa. But we would go to the American Legion, and so if someone passed away or if they had debt, they wanted to exchange property, they would just have a public auction. And that was...
That's so cool.
It's a very cool... It's a method of marketing, and it's a way to get fair market value on, your items.
I love the Midwest. And I love, because it's in some ways you feel like you're going to a simpler time.
It is.
When, and I like to joke about, I say, I didn't know that I grew up in New Jersey, which is the most densely populated state per square mile.
Yeah, I don't think there's any simpler
so it's
times.
It's not even just that there's however many people, but they're packed in like sardines. And then I lived in Missouri for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, I didn't know I grew up in a police state until I moved to Missouri and stayed there for 6 years and learned what America really is. There's a feeling of people talking about, this is God's land, it's the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
And just the sheer amount of space. And I was walking along the Missouri River one day and saw a bald eagle nest. When you see these things, and for me growing up in New Jersey, where you see a deer or a squirrel and you think that that's wildlife, and then you go to a place like Missouri or a place like Iowa. I mentioned in the first segment about seeing more swans than I'd ever seen in my life in one place, in a pond on the outskirts. I forget what town. What town did you grow up in?
I grew up in a pig farming town called Dixon.
Okay.
And there were just 200 people there.
Really?
200 people. 20 of them were my family members. And the town was surrounded by farms, by cornfields, soybean fields, pig farms, some cows as well. But just kind of nestled in the middle of nowhere, near a city called Davenport, Iowa, which is on the Mississippi.
Okay.
That was kind of the landscape for my childhood, growing up in this little town. And then when I was a boy, we moved to the country outside of this town, so even kind of more remote. Yeah. And so I really grew up outside of a small town and just in the middle of fields.
How cool.
And that's it's where I got exposed to my first auctions, livestock, real estate, personal property, that sort of stuff. And it's also where the poems came from just...
you had the time and the space to get into your own head.
Yeah, ample.
Right.
Ample time and space. And you would love it, Gianna. It's just very tranquil.
Yes.
It's quiet. It's slow-moving. The clouds, the fields themselves, they become sort of non-human characters in your life, and you keep seeing them all the time, and they're friends. They're friends, but they're also, as you said about this sort of... You said something about, was it mortality within the mortal reaction?
I said, because I believe, I might not post the first segment because I was so unfocused. I said of Iowa in the first segment that it's like the mortal response to eternity.
Yeah.
Not only the alpha and the omega, but the in-between.
Yeah.
A tire on a fire.
Yeah. Perfect. And that tire on the fire is a symbol in one of the poems. And I don't know if for you listeners, if you've ever seen anyone throw a tire on a fire, it burns black, and it rises up in a great big plume of dark black smoke, and it looks sort of hideous. But that is a...
Do not try that at home. I'm sure it's not good for the environment.
Yeah, it's not the kind of smoke signal you want to send to your friends on Long Island. But it's so dark and the opposite of what you see on a sunny day in a cornfield. But that becomes a symbol of this thing that happens in between the eternal and the mortal, like you're saying. And another thing that I just think of is just a scream, because you have this sort of silence, this peace, this restfulness. But inside, of course, we're quite alive, and it's not always easy to merge with peace and nothing. You're not just born a Buddhist,
right?
Especially when you're around a bunch of pigs.
Although for this one, I remember when I was very young, I would meditate, and I feel like a Benjamin Button, because I feel like I'm so much less wise than I was in the single digits back when things were much more simple. But it's funny because I wonder if you are, like me, a synesthesiast, because the imagery and your connection to all of your senses, when I first talked about Iowa in the first segment, I said, what does the synesthesiast smell of this book of poetry? And that is the way that I intake things. Synesthesia is it's sort of a connection of the senses. Some people, for some, numbers have color, or it's sort of like that. It's like where the tactile senses and where the senses switched up.
They blend into one. Do you want? I can give you an example.
Please do.
You can determine whether or not I'm a synesthesiast. This is from the early part of the book, and it's called The Beginning. I stand in a field and listen to wind become water on my skin. No words, just hawks in the sky and wasps in the swing set. The corn crib swells with rock-hard cobs of multicolored grain. A bull snake coils around my leg. I step from its boot-like grip. A field is an ocean of green leaves. The wind waves on my skin.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And I love something that I was mentioning also before is the rhythm of Iowa. It's like a string thread that ties the whole book together, so you could almost read it as one single poem.
Yeah.
We've got to wrap up, but I do want to bring it back. So Saturday at 5 at
St. Luke's in East Hampton. Come and see the box art auction. You'll hear me chanting. If there's 1 minute, I'll chant before we go, but we'll be having a live auction. And then Sunday at 5 at Harbor Books in Sag Harbor, I'll be reading from Iowa.
Here on the Gianna Volpe Report. Take us out, Lucas Hunt.
Let's go ahead and try to sell a book of poetry. Can we get an opening bid of $100? Thank you very much, Gianna. $100 there. Would you bid two? I bid $100 over here. Would you bid two? $200 now. Two. Would you bid two? I bid $100 here. $200 where? Would you bid two? I bid $200. Thank you very much, sir. $200 now. Three. Would you bid three? I bid $200 over here. Now who's going to bid three? Would you bid three? It's a good book of poetry, sir. It's only money. $300. $300 new high bid now. Four. Would you bid four? I bid $300 now. Four. Would you bid four? $400. Do I hear any takers? It's only money. How about a $400 bid? $400 new high bid. Thank you very much, madam. I think we don't have much time, so I'm going to sell that at $400 to you. Thank you very much.
Here on 1390 WRIV, your hometown station.
An overhead door serves a purpose, and it should be as beautiful as the rest of your home or building. For more than 30 years, Village Overhead Doors has been creating and installing beautiful garage doors for contractors and homeowners on the North and South Forks. They also install automatic garage door openers that open with the click of a remote, so there's no getting out of the car in bad weather. For a wide range of styles, from lifetime steel doors to custom-made wood doors, and for all your garage door needs, please call 765-4963 today and find out how your garage door can be a beautiful focal point of your home or building's exterior. Village Overhead Doors of Southold, 765-4963. Make the call and let them add beauty and value to your home or business.
The Peconic Cellar Door, 2885 Peconic Lane in Peconic is open. Come see the North Fork's newest tasting room and enjoy book and onology wines, as if wines, and Saltburn cellar wines, all in an intimate, comfortable farmhouse setting that sets the North Fork apart. Robin Epperson McCarthy and Allie Shaper are looking forward to meeting you. Monday night is Locals Night, with discounts between 4 and 7. While you're there, bring home a bottle of Saltburn cellar wine, Brooklyn Onology wine, or as if wine. Excellent with dinner or to sip while you're sitting outside in the early evening hours. And bring a skeleton key and have some fun telling and hearing stories at the Peconic Cellar Door. The Peconic Cellar Door, 2885 Peconic Lane in Peconic.
Ba-da-da-da-da-da.